along with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Marshall, give an invocation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll bow your heads with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening and the ability to gather together as community members and leaders that hope to make great decisions for the future of our community. Thank you for giving everyone the communitarian heart to be able to come out on a special meeting like this tonight. Anyone who's interested in seeing the betterment of Branson moving forward. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Marshall. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Lucas. Denham.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
LeBlanc.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you.
Your Honor, this is a resolution declaring a need to address developments proposing data centers and cryptocurrency mining centers in the city of Branson, and thus a 100-day administrative delay of applications and permits pertaining to the development of data centers and cryptocurrency mining centers located in the city of Branson, Missouri.
Thank you. We'll get a staff report from Amanda. Hello, Amanda.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. Thank you for your time this evening. Let's go ahead and get started here. All right. Tonight we're here regarding a resolution declaring a need to address developments proposing data centers and cryptocurrency mining centers in the city of Branson, and thus a 100-day administrative delay of applications and permits pertaining to the development of data centers and cryptocurrency mining centers located in the city of Branson, Missouri. Data centers are a large group of networked computer servers typically used by organizations for the remote storage, processing, or distribution of large amounts of data. Mining is the process that Bitcoin and several other cryptocurrencies use to generate new coins and verify new transactions. It involves vast decentralized networks of computers around the world that verify and secure blockchains, the virtual ledgers that document cryptocurrency transactions. While necessary for progress, data and cryptocurrency mining, while necessary for progress and globalization, these industries have become a worldwide concern due to infrastructure requirements, energy consumption, noise pollution, and personal health, resulting in increased litigation. Our current code does not adequately address appropriate protections and buffers. Some of our general concerns are noise pollution and addressing sound buffers and land buffers. Lithium batteries are hazardous materials and require hazmat remediation. Easily movable in short time frame. Infrastructure requirements, water and electricity. Impact on future development. And burgeoning industry rife with conflict in municipalities. The sounds emitted by data centers originate from a variety of sources, including the hum of servers, whirling of cooling fans, and the continuous operation of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning HVAC systems. This noise not only affects the well-being of the data center staff, but also poses an environmental challenge as these facilities increasingly become neighbors to residential areas. Some municipalities are setting a general rule: the noise level of the data center must not increase the noise level of the existing background level at the location of the nearest sensitive location. Generally, this means that the noise from data centers must be the existing nighttime background noise at the nearest residence. Here we have some information from the American Speech Language Hearing Association. Kind of gives you an idea of the decibels and what those are in relation to. Some that are not safe for any period of time at 130 dBA would be something like a jackhammer. Extremely loud, you get into the hundreds, which are like your sporting events. Very loud and dangerous to hearing is in your 90s, which would be like a passing motorcycle or a gas mower. Moderate's going to be from your 40s to 70s, something like a moderate rainfall. And faint would be somewhere around in 30 dBA, which would be a whisper, safe listening for any time period. This is just a visual of those which levels are known in dBA, which are decibels adjusted to show the ear's response to different frequencies of noise. I'm going to go over a few case studies real quick. When crypto mining comes to town, high electricity use spillovers to the local economy. Increase of demand increases cost of electricity. Economic cost of rising consumption to the area as a whole. Crypto mining, the clearing of cryptocurrency transactions uses large quantities of electricity. When document that crypto miners' use of local electricity implies higher electricity prices for existing small businesses and households. Local governments dig deep to tackle regulations for Bitcoin mining. They can build almost anywhere, and they're easily movable. A lot of times you'll see them in storage units, Connex containers, old office buildings, and defunct retail space. They can set up almost anywhere as long as they meet the primary requirement of a large amount of cheap electricity. They are sometimes in storage units. Where do you went over that? Bitcoin miner in Plattsburgh who packed up its site and left in a single weekend to relocate about 60 miles away to a less regulated community. In Missoula County, a Bitcoin miner filed for bankruptcy in 2020 and left with a multi-million-dollar outstanding energy bill. Water consumption, massive Bitcoin facility underway in Navarro County, Warren's Coalition. This is located in a drought-stricken Navarro County, Texas. Will use in peak summer months water shortages in 2022, forced ranchers to sell cattle in record numbers not seen in a decade. The facility, once fully expanded, will use more than 1.4 million gallons of water every day during peak months from mid-May to October, even as Texas faces extreme drought conditions during most summers. So suggestions tonight, we would like to put a moratorium in place. We would like you to support that. We would like to create more comprehensive use and structure standards, review the definitions in our code, address the sound levels in code, and review appropriate zoning districts. Staff's proposing additional code amendments throughout Chapter 94 to ensure the protection of the city, its residents, and future developments. These amendments may include, but are not limited to, Section 94.5 definitions, Section 9460 table of permitted uses, Section 9461 the use and structure standards. Currently in Section 94.5, data center means a facility whose primary service is data processing and is used to house computer systems and associated components, such as telecommunications and storage systems, including but not limited to web hosting organizations and internet service organizations, a server farm, telecom hotel, carrier hotel, telehouse, co-location center, or any other term applicable to facilities which are used for these specific purposes shall be deemed to be a data center. In Section 9461, the use and structure standards. Industrial use. The industrial uses shall be subject to the following standards. All traffic hazards shall be minimized. Lights shall be directed away from adjoining residential areas. Off-street loading areas shall be available as needed, and no dust, smoke, fumes, gas, noxious odors, excessive noise, or other atmospheric effluent shall exceed in intensity and the boundary of conditions normally found in a residential neighborhood. Some possible use structure standards we're looking at would be to require baseline sound mapping, possibly perform regular audits to ensure noise abatement procedures remain effective, require land buffers to ensure baseline decibels do not encroach onto others' properties, require agreements with utility companies, and require energy-efficient servers that produce less heat, thus requiring less cooling. If you propose this moratorium tonight and vote in favor of it, this would be our timeline. We would post a hearing to be published in the paper on July 20th. Planning and Zoning Commission hold a public hearing regarding data centers and cryptocurrency mining on August 6th. Planning and Zoning Commission make a preliminary report involving the data center and crypto mining on August 27th. P&Z Commission submits final report on data centers and cryptocurrency mining centers to the Board of Aldermen on September 10th, and the expiration of the moratorium would be September 12th. I have my team here. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to try to answer those for you.
Thank you, Amanda. So basically what you're saying, I think, is our current zoning codes don't address this specific type of use. And what your department, what staff is requesting is for a 100-day moratorium for you to gather more information and gather facts and make recommendations to this board of maybe amending some of our code to address these things.
Correct.
Anybody in the audience have any comments or
Mr.
questions?
Mayor?
Mayor,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
if we could just get it on the floor is what I was going to
Do
say.
I have a motion adopting the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Any members of the audience wishing to address this?
Mr. Mayor, before we get to the audience, may I ask a question of Amanda?
Sure.
Thank you. My observation, so after I got your notice and we talked about it a little bit, I read through the codes with an eye towards this whole thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is, first, the codes are fairly dated that we're talking about. But my sense is they were essentially written for like a bank data processing center or, you know, something that wasn't quite as intensive as what we see with the current state of bit mining, you know, with that kind of power density, that kind of noise density. And so my take on it, and you tell me if I'm right on this, is we really need to bring our codes up to this type of technology to support the things that we could run into that our current codes just simply are silent about.
Correct. That is correct, Alderman.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience wishing to address this or ask questions or make comments?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gabe Palacios, P-A-L-A-C-I-O-S. Tonight I'm here in several different capacities. First and foremost, I'll be speaking and reading something on behalf of the potential future data center end user group. They've prepared something. They couldn't be here this evening, but I'll read that first. And then secondly, I'll go ahead and address the board as a licensed architect and general contractor leading the development, and as part of the developer group responsible for kind of putting the whole package together.
Great.
So first, I would like to read the statement from Terra Industry. They are the potential future end user, as I stated. So first, an overview of their company. Our company is not merely a Bitcoin mining operation. We are a comprehensive technology company specializing in data center operations and artificial intelligence development that is proudly owned by Americans. Our presence in Branson will bring substantial economic benefits, including high-paying jobs, advanced technology training programs, and a significant boost in local infrastructure. The employment opportunities are as follows. Under their current operations, we currently employ staff across Florida, Kansas, and Wyoming, maintaining a robust, non-seasonal workforce. All our operations require round-the-clock staffing, ensuring year-round employment stability. We offer competitive salaries that are 125% of the average local salary, underscoring our commitment to providing well-paying jobs that enhance the local economy. Now I'll give you a breakdown of what those jobs are like. So planning and hiring in Branson moving forward, the immediate hiring of 4 employees within 3 months of startup, which would consist of 2 security personnel and 2 technicians. Their first-year expansion would have 6 additional employees, being 3 technicians, 1 manager, and 1 specialist in repairs. Their second-year expansion would include 5 administrative staff, bookkeeping, marketing, and business operations. Their management and training, one of our founders will relocate himself and his family to Branson to oversee the site, ensuring smooth operations and strategic alignment with local economic goals. We will also implement an educational program to train local technicians in AI system repairs and AISC repairs, fostering a skilled workforce in the region. And in conclusion, by allowing us to do business in Branson, the Economic Board will not only be welcoming a tech company, but also an organization dedicated to community growth and technological advancement. Our investment in local talent and infrastructure will provide sustainable economic benefits and position Branson as a hub for innovation and tech industry. In addition to that, I would like to say that Tara and myself and my group have also met with your development directors here in the city over the course of the last couple of months and talked with them about economic incentives that exist and what a big benefit this would be to your local community. Again, these are not seasonal jobs. These are jobs that pay much better than your average local salaries. And as you can see, there's quite a few positions there, only one of which is being relocated from Kansas, the rest all being hired local. So that's on their side and doesn't necessarily address the things that Amanda was talking about in relation to code. So I'll go ahead and step into that and put my architect hat on now and talk to you from that perspective. So Amanda brought up some excellent concerns. These are things that we have seen in the industry for quite some time. And I think really since about 2017, when this really kind of the advent of this mining craze started happening, these were a lot of the concerns that we were seeing. A lot of the, I mean, there were people building just these enormous facilities down in Texas. We're talking 500,000 square feet, no regulation, the noise was unbelievable. Since then, obviously, several municipalities got together and said, this is just not what we want to have. Being sensitive to that, we as architects and designers have changed that. So I can assure you, dealing with the noise, she brought up an excellent graph talking about the decibel levels. So I have a signed affidavit from the manufacturers of these mining containers that we intend to put on the site that state that their decibel levels are 55 to 60 at a quarter mile away and 65 to 70 at up to 50 feet away. So if you recall from her graph, that listed even the highest level there at 50 feet away, listed as a moderate level, which is akin to a group conversation, a vacuum cleaner, or an alarm clock. So that's really the sound level that we're talking about. So it's been a dramatic shift in the industry over the last 5 years from what we used to have, these just incredibly noisy machines that would be like walking up on a huge diesel generator out in an oil and gas field, something like that. I mean, just really incredibly noisy. Well, obviously, the manufacturers knew they couldn't sell those anymore with that kind of an environment. So they've figured out how to create sound attenuation in those and bring those levels down to a vacuum cleaner. From 50 feet away, it's no different than a vacuum cleaner. And again, this being an industrial or commercial site, no different than any other type of manufacturing type operations in the area. Moving on to energy, I will bring up a representative from White River Valley Electric Co-op here to speak after me. But I assure you that bringing this client in is actually, instead of bringing costs up, this brings your costs down. Because you're a cooperative, and our client's consumption level being somewhere around $100,000 a month worth of electric bill, that spreads to the entire community and brings everybody's bill down. So it's actually a net benefit to everybody in the community that's part of the co-op. In addition to that, and she can speak better than I can on the subject, but this is excess power that was developed specifically to this site, which has been and gone undeveloped for 20 years. And that electricity is just sitting there waiting for 20 years to be used at this site. This development is exactly what this site needs to spur continued further economic growth in the area. I think, anybody can look at an open site, and being the first business owner, being the first person to come to a site is a scary proposition. But after you have your first person come in and succeed, and people see that this will help draw business, other businesses continue to move in that direction and will move into the area. Volatility was one of the concerns on the presentation as well. Being that the storage units are easily movable and somebody can just pick up in the dead of night and move on, I assure you that even though our intention is to utilize some of these storage units as part of the development on the site, nobody's moving. This is a $1.5 million development at the first phase, $650,000 of which is just underground electrical infrastructure to disperse the electrical power from where we pick it up from the power company to the different buildings and whatnot. So even if they decided to move, they'd be leaving $1 million behind on the ground. So I assure you there's the containers themselves being easily movable. Again, this was part of the early generation of crypto mining. A lot of these containers are being utilized and put out in, let's say like Permian Basin, for example. We have extra flare gas and vent gas that's just being vented off. Well, they're hooking up unscrubbed natural gas generators to these and using that for power and running containers. So that was sort of where that came from. And in that scenario, you're just chasing wherever the vent gas goes and wherever the cheap power is. This is not that scenario. And again, we are intending to use the containers as part of the development on site, but these are going to be set in place and will not be easily movable. Water consumption, the type of mining and data center that we're using uses zero water consumption. So that's a non-issue. We will have offices and restrooms on site. So really the extent of the water consumption would be a couple of water closets and sinks, nothing more than an average office. I believe is it Glenn, that addressed that our codes are dated and that we need to review that. As a matter of fact, the most recent version of the 2019 IBC does address this, in fact, and brings the new code up to standard and allows for the use of storage containers as part of data mining centers. So it seems that, again, 5 years ago, there was a lot of this commotion going on, and so they've addressed it, they've looked at it, and now it is part of the new code, is an actual allowance of these types of pieces of equipment. It would be looked at similar to, I would say, a chilled water cooling tower, like you'd have on, like this building probably has one. It's a large piece of equipment is essentially what it is. Essentially, they've taken these 40-foot Connex storage containers and cut louvers into them, put fans, and put a bunch of computers into them. They come fully UL listed and rated, so it meets code just like any other piece of industrial equipment would. Any other questions? And I'll be happy to come back up if you've got anything else and if you think of things.
Gabe, thanks for sharing that. You did hit a couple areas that we're obviously very interested in: higher paying jobs, year-round employment. I mean, that's the goal of this board.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to reiterate, this is not a hearing regarding an application. This is on notice today, and I don't want us to veer off of the requirements because I don't want to violate the Sunshine Law. So we need to make sure this is about a moratorium, not a particular development.
Do you understand what she said, Gabe?
I believe so.
Yeah. So, yeah, we need to keep the topic on the general
Just a
use.
broader
Yeah.
level, correct.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Holly.
speaking to that, because Gabe, you spoke adequately on the merits of this proposal. I'm curious to hear it. Do you have any thoughts on what's actually being voted on tonight, on the 100-day moratorium? Would that preclude you from moving forward, or?
Yes. So my concern is that our proposed future client, Tara, has other options on the table that are not in this state and that are not in the city of Branson or in surrounding areas. We have gone through all of the proper channels and steps. We had our open for business meeting with the city. All of these items were discussed in that meeting. We talked about decibel levels. We talked about water consumption. We talked about power. White River Valley Electric Co-op has talk to the city and let them know how much this would help the local community. So we've addressed all these concerns as part of the normal channels. We spoke with Jonas for the development team and talked to them about the influx of jobs. So, and furthermore, I would say that the codes that you do have in place are already going to protect you in that regard. For all of the things that you've discussed, there's nothing there that we couldn't address during Planning Commission and through plan development or plan review. We're still going to have to meet all the applicable codes and requirements, and I don't think that anything that we're proposing or addressing goes outside of those bounds. And so what we are really faced with here in particular is that the 100 days loses the local economy of the project, and it goes away. And again, some of the concerns are valid, and if you do Google search, you'll see all of those things. And I'm here to tell you, yes, I was part of some of those early developments 6, 7 years ago, before the big boom of 2017. We put containers out in West Texas and helped them, spark up. And then we're part of a huge development with Northern Data, who is the 3rd largest crypto mining company in the world. So we've seen this advent and this change move on. But I think the codes and ordinances you have in place already, coupled with just the change in industry, so to speak, is going to protect you. I just would hate to see the project walk away.
I respect that, but I also have to respect my planning department and building department. What they're asking this board to do is allow them time to bring our codes up to address this.
Again, I don't know that your current codes are not protecting you. For example, if I tried to go and set a jet plane down on the ground there and run it at 140 decibels, that would not be allowed to happen. I mean, that's the type of noise that you guys are talking about. I'm talking about the noise of a vacuum cleaner, which in your city ordinances as of right now, I don't believe that those excessive noise levels are allowed as is. And the water consumption you're talking about is non-existent. The electrical issues you're talking about are non-existent. All of the points that she brought up are non-existent issues, even with the current code. We'd still have to meet your local ordinances and code that, as far as I understand, are protecting you already.
Well,
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
So I appreciate what you're saying, especially coming at it from an architect, coming at it as an engineer. Right. I've looked through the codes and I don't see the references to DBA or DBC levels on the property. So I appreciate when you say you've got equipment that's a certain level. This is where I think our codes are deficient, right? We don't have any specifications for this type. We've never anticipated this type of application, and the codes don't support it. Similarly, I think an area that I'm concerned about that our codes don't adequately address today is Connex containers as the primary buildings on an industrial site. I just don't think we're prepared for the issues related to that from a code perspective. I've read through the code. I appreciate the IBC issues. I get that, but I just don't think as a city we've really thought through some of the implications. So personally, I think this is a necessary step to protect the interests of the city. I'd like to see us get through it faster than 100 days. I don't know if that's possible. I appreciate we've got a busy staff, but I think it's absolutely some steps we need to take, because if we don't do this, we could potentially cripple additional businesses that would want to move in nearby lots. We've got a huge residential development next to that industrial park that's destined to expand towards the industrial park that certainly is going to have a voice if we don't do this properly. And so I think from my perspective, it's necessary that we take some time, bring our codes up to these types of applications, and hopefully with your expertise as some input to that we can find an equitable solution for you guys.
I have a proposition for you. So regardless of what the code says, there's always an asterisk in the back of any code book that says that it is still subject to the AHJ, the local authority having jurisdiction. So I would propose that we put a quick time out on the moratorium and we leave it to the authority having jurisdiction, which is the same party that would be working the moratorium, just for a time-sake issue, right? And so that they would still have overriding authority over anything that we are producing with this particular project to align with whatever the future goals would be during that 100-day phase, just for the simple sake of being able to move forward and not lose the project, but also still be held within the oversight of your committee and staff, who are also being the ones that would develop this.
Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor?
I'm sorry. May I just follow up on that?
Sure.
I appreciate that. I think that's an admirable suggestion. I realize we're the AHJ, but on the same token, we wouldn't ask for 100 days if we didn't need it to come up with the things that are necessary from our perspective. I agree that potentially we can accelerate that. And if you can provide some input and help and best practices to our staff to give them some additional references as we build this up, I think that would be admirable. But I think we're going to need some time from my perspective.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're kind of getting into the area of the hearing again.
Yeah, I agree with you. Gabe, I agree with Glenn. And we're not here to really talk about a specific project.
Right, correct.
All right, so we need to stay on the topic of the overall.
Correct. I would like to bring Devin up with White River so that she can talk to you about the power consumption and how it does actually benefit the community in a positive way.
Good evening. Again, Devin Sonnenfeld with White River Valley Electric Cooperative, and I'm just here to address any concerns that you might have with our perspective from the utility industry. I cannot speak on behalf of an IOU, but I can speak on behalf of a cooperative, and all concerns that have been addressed here this evening are very valid. But from our perspective, when we look at the capacity that it takes to operate a data center and what we have in the current location at Commerce Park, we are very comfortable in the fact that that amount of energy needed we can provide, because as a utility provider, that's what we set ourselves up for. We set ourselves up for growth, not to sit back and just be complacent in where we're at and serving, right? So we want to see all loads utilized and to be able to grow. So when you look at a project such as a data center or cryptocurrency mining, anything like that, White River and most co-ops around the state have set themselves up for sustainable, reliable use of electricity. We currently have a territorial agreement in the space provided, and I don't want to get off track. I want to stay where we're at, not get off in the grass. But at the current facility that we're discussing, there is infrastructure there to serve a project like this with additional capacity to take on more. I'm having to read my notes because I'm not an engineer like Glenn, so I appreciate his perspective. Yes, sir.
If we can, let's stay away from this project.
Oh, okay, I was just addressing the whole, yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yep, so generally speaking.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
From your point of view, White River has enough capacity today,
Yes.
Capacity for future growth. Gabe mentioned that by this may actually reduce the cost of electricity for our city residents that are with White River.
Yes. So when you look at us as a whole, we serve 44,000 members in a 5-county region. So when we talk about our membership, whenever you have sustainable growth and you put this capacity on the grid, the amount of use, you're going to sustain your peak because it's a year-round use, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this energy is not going to shut off for maintenance. It's not going to shut off for any reason. So they would do things in a tiered level where there's consumption all the time. So whenever you put that amount of energy on the grid, it makes the grid level out and actually bring your costs down. So the way that I could explain it is you and I go home every night and we flip our switch on, we turn our stove on. That causes your energy use to go up and down, like you turn your dryer on. Well, whenever you bring a load like this on the grid, it levels out because it's running all the time at the same consistency. So it spreads that use out evenly and actually brings the cost down because you're not using peak levels of energy at certain hours of the day, which would bring that cost down to all of our members that we serve. Again, that's speaking on a co-op's behalf, not an investor-owned utility.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yes.
If I may, so, I think from what we're talking about tonight here, it's not so much the industrial park that's our interest, it's the broader question of what we should do from an ordinance and code perspective to permit or deny data centers like this in the future, right? The one that's being talked about. So I think we need to broaden that out even further, right? I don't think saying that the industrial park has sufficient capacity is the issue.
Sure.
Right? So I think and I'm not asking for an answer tonight, but looking at Amanda's staff, I think they would sure appreciate some guidance from our utilities as to how to codify this in a more general sense. Because I can imagine there are areas where if we said we wanted to drop a data center that you would have issues because of the infrastructure that you don't have in place. And I also know that if there are areas that are already serving high peak demands, like an industrial park, that the leveling of the load actually makes the situation worse because you're maintaining a high peak during high peak times. That's the kind of data we need you to feed to Amanda's team so that we understand when this comes up in front of a planning and zoning board for approval, that our ordinance gives them the guidelines they should be looking for to approve or deny that kind of application from a utilities perspective. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
again, it's not the industrial park. I mean, your answers should fit the industrial park, but it's not the industrial park.
Sure, yes, it would be the community as a whole, as we should all be looking at any project whenever it comes to the table. And we would be happy to provide that information if we were to be contacted. We would be happy to assist with that. That's what we're here to do.
Thanks very much, appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. And just one more thing, like serving as a business development specialist and looking at the city of Branson as a whole, the economic impact that any data center would have within Branson or rural communities, because that's really where our specialty is in rural communities. That's how we were founded. But when you look at that and talk about the economic impact that it could have to Taney County, to the city of Branson, to the state of Missouri, overall, I just think that should be considered when we look, as we start to look into code, to think about some of those things, because when you really start to limit what you're allowing, you could actually be pushing dollars outside of your town to relocate somewhere else. So I think that's just something we need to consider on any project as we move forward.
Thank you, Devin. Appreciate it.
Is there any other questions? Thank you.
Appreciate you.
So I might as well be the bad guy. Bob Hewells. I realize that the resolution is not specific to any particular property or project. However, I feel it impossible to believe that it's just a coincidence that it came up 8 hours after we put in an application, after 2 months of working with the city and planning and zoning and city officials, and after spending many, many, many thousands of dollars because this was a industrial park that we were looking at. A little bit about, not this project, but the industrial park, for your background information, because no one was on the board at the time. I was involved in the development. It's a 329 or 69 acre project. The residential is done. There is no more residential to expand to this property unless it would be possibly multifamily. And that's along a creek that's never going to get built on. We just had to call it something, so we called it multifamily because at the time nobody was building multifamily. We didn't think we'd ever use it. The rest of the project was built in essence as a smart park, which was a 1990s project. We
Bob.
started working on it at that time.
Bob,
yes.
excuse me. We need to go back to the bigger picture.
This
Now-
is a very big picture, Your Honor.
Well, we're talking about the Commerce Industrial Park.
Yes, sir.
We didn't announce we're going to be discussing the Commerce Industrial. What
Fine.
was announced for this meeting was to talk about the overall.
And as an overall, any place that we would want to put one of these would be best suited as an industrial park that was built specifically for these uses with redundant electricity, redundant fiber optics, and the capacity and put away from the public, the residential
Okay,
development.
I'll give you that. If
Any
we,
develop, so I'm not going to talk about whether this project goes forward or anything else, but the planned development there allows for virtually any industrial use and light manufacturing. A welding shop is allowed on there by name and by right, and frankly would make twice to 3 times the decibel level of sound and put off more heat.
so you're
and
talking
problems.
about putting this project at the industrial park?
I'm talking about any project going at any industrial park, they would be
Bob, we need
best
to
at
stay
the
off of
one
that,
is
okay?
there. The next problem I have, sir, is that we have all these people here, the sellers are from Kansas and Nebraska, the buyers are from Oklahoma and other parts of the country, and we got less than 24-hour notice of this meeting, and I didn't have a problem with it when it was said that it was going to be for educational purposes. This is a resolution that stops a sale for a development, in this particular case, that's been stagnant for 20 years because it fell into the 2008 nightmare. So I am telling you that the sellers have asked us to step up and say that we are opposed to any delay in the future of this. If you want to change your rules for the future of other projects, but this project was actually already applied for.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
I promise I won't talk about the business park. I don't even know where that's at, okay? Chris Wynn, civil engineer, Springfield, Missouri. Maybe I didn't know what I was getting into on this project, but I do have one thing that I want to bring up, and you know, the city staff says that we don't have code for data centers. I was looking at table 94-60.1, and under the permitted uses in industrial zoned parts of this town, it does specifically say data center. So to say that we don't have code on data centers in general is tough for me to believe. I would encourage whoever's in control of the computer to bring up table 94-60.1 industrial services, and you will see that that is a data centers is an approved use. So I think that anytime a use comes in front of this board or up to planning and zoning that, you know, they might not have favorable code for, or maybe they need to expand on code, I understand that, but to bring a special meeting to put a moratorium on something when you do have data centers listed, just so you can put more regulations on them, shouldn't come at the burden of developers or someone who's this deep into a process.
Thank you very much.
Steve Critchfield, Commercial One Brokers. Since I've worked on this thing for this long, but let's talk about the overall concept. These won't go in a lot of places and wouldn't be acceptable in a lot of places. So the Commerce Park or Industrial Park is kind of logical. And I know Bob spent lots of time trying to find some place that fit those qualifications. There weren't any. That's why the mystery place was selected. I listened to a little bit of the presentation. I would tell you be extremely careful, as I'm not going to speak for Jonas, but I know I spent a lot of time with Jonas trying to find and get users to come to this market and build in that particular mystery area. And as you can see, we didn't have a hell of a lot of luck. And this will kick off this property.
Steve?
Let's just say it would draw, we need somebody to be first with something, and this is a first use in the community. Let me go a little step further. If you do some of the limits I heard talked about tonight, we might as well go on up the street to Springfield and the small towns around Springfield who are attracting industrial uses that we can't and aren't for lots of reasons. But we all talk about getting employment that's year-round, good-paying jobs. Okay, sounds like a good idea to me.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Hearing none, what are some thoughts of the board? Kathy, you want to go?
I do. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming tonight. I think that was very informational for our team to be able to hear. And Mr. Mayor, for the good of the board, I just want to commit that in the event you do decide to pass this, our staff is fully committed to turn something around even faster than what the guideline is that we gave you. Obviously, we've got a lot of plates spinning in that department right now, lots of projects going on around the city. But it is an important effort to make sure that our codes are sufficient and that we don't want to, be locking out certain types of industries necessarily, but we want to balance it with common sense and making sure we're mindful of current residents. So you have our commitment from administration side to do whatever we can to move things quickly, but still without sacrificing quality. So thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago when we got caught in a trap of the entertainment district, right? We were approving lodging, and there was no lodging code for 76. Excuse me, residential codes. Any other members?
Mr. Mayor. So when we talked over the years about year-round employment and bringing different industry to Branson, the idea of a factory of some time has always sort of seemed far-fetched. So I think a lot of us have looked to the tech sector as a place where we could grow. To be completely frank with you, when I first heard about this the other day that we were going to have a meeting, I had some concerns because I've heard national news stories about the consumption of energy that these take up and everything like that. My thought is that if we voted no on this tonight, I imagine that our department would still move forward looking at these codes going forward. So without speaking to a project, I would be concerned of us losing any project of this magnitude when we also could look at some specifics, not tonight at this meeting, but from code. Here are some of the concessions that might come from an applicant, and continue to move forward with everything that we intend to do during this 100-day moratorium. But I'm just probably, right now, I'm probably a no on this tonight.
Any other members?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to be clear. I think I agree with Alderman Howden that we need that to attract this kind of business to Branson is beneficial to Branson, right? I think having IT-type organizations here done properly is a good thing for Branson. But I also feel that when I look at our codes never really properly anticipated this type of activity. And I would prefer we'd get it right. And I'm hoping that with some very knowledgeable people in the market in front of us, that they can provide input to codifying what we should be doing as a city, speed the process along, and allow them to start their project wherever in the city they want to start it.
Yep, no, I agree with you. Ruth?
I agree with Alderman Schultz and Howden. And then I just even looked in our definitions, because a comment was made earlier, too, saying, oh, it was more like for bank data. So there's not even a definition for data. So I think that is something huge that needs to be discussed also. So, yeah, I support staff being able to move forward with their research and provide more information.
Thank you.
I kind of fall with Marshall. I don't disagree that it needs to be more defined, and you want to set yourself up for the future as more of these come in, but I'm not sure why we couldn't just do the diligence, do the work that you're planning on doing without just putting a freeze on this. I mean,
Clay, I think the benefit of putting the freeze on is though we can have actual clear code in place, definition of a data center, because that's a really good point. Data center's in our code. It doesn't mean this kind of a data center, right? It was meant for office. I mean, this kind of data center wasn't even dreamed of back when that word data center was put in the code. I just think moving forward that the having the clear guidance, you recall what we just went through on the strip, right? Our code didn't address it. We never anticipated it, and it started happening, and we gave the time for the staff to come up with the proper language.
I guess my question is, I mean, I don't want to say the word because every time somebody said it, they got in trouble tonight. But trying to think on how to ask, is it Gabe?
Gabe.
So Gabe's done the application for this whatever project, and has there been any red flags or any I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, you can't talk about it. Okay, well, I need to talk about that to make a good decision on voting yes for this, and I can't without that information.
Mr. Mayor,
No.
I have a question. If we were to vote no on this tonight, and then at the next P&Z meeting or one following that, they were to codify what we want to codify and shore up our codes. If, let's say, hypothetically, there was an application that was passed and went through all the building processes and everything in the next week or so before that went on, would they be essentially grandfathered in?
Absolutely. And that's the part of my concern.
Amanda, I'm putting you on the spot, so forgive me. Is there a complete application that we've received on, oh, wait, I can't ask that because it's
Nope.
project-specific.
Never mind.
I just violated what I'm telling them not to violate, so, sorry.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Mayor, since we've got Amanda up here, if I may.
Yes.
So I appreciate that you worked on timelines and et cetera, so I'm sorry to ask this question, but is it realistic that with some input from some industry expertise, that we can accelerate this timeline dramatically?
We could probably, yes, the answer would be yes. Out of respect of what this meeting's for tonight, it's hard for me to speak on things.
Yeah, and I'm not asking you to commit. I understand. You did your homework. But
We would
is
do
there
our
some
very
sense
best
of realism that with some industry expert input like we have in this room
to
that we
come up
could
with a
accelerate
resolution
it?
before the 100 days? Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, yes,
Okay,
we need to keep
so-
in mind the advertising deadlines and everything that goes along with it, to
Yes.
not be rushed
Yes.
in that, so.
Okay, so with that, the, well, technically no, but if you would, make it brief.
Thank you. What if any person who wanted to make an application on any property for this use at this time were to agree to go through quickly with all the help we can for the time being as a special use, which this is not a special use unless we agree to it, because it is a PD and it's listed as a use. But if we were to agree to go through the special use, then any concerns could be addressed in the requirements of the special use, which could possibly eliminate the time crunch problem of the architects and the builders and all those people of any project anywhere in town. That maybe that would be a solution for this now, so that P&Z goes through all of those questions and we can address certain fears with this project, a project that's proposed. So if you have a project that comes in and proposed, we use it as a special use, then we can say you can't use excess water, the heat or the electricity can't affect the grid, or you have to show us that it won't. The contracts, the containers, by the way, are not buildings. That's equipment. That's like a generator.
What's that?
Chairman, I think that we are getting very close to being in that hearing situation again, so I call for the question.
I am proposing a hearing, so thank you.
Yeah, and I would just point out, Mr. Mayor, I'd be a little concerned about not instituting the moratorium because there's nothing to say that there may not be more applicants tomorrow. No matter what the remedy would be, I think we as a city need to get our codes together and move on.
Artie has called for the
He's
question.
called for the question. I second.
So with that,
You need a second for that.
Ruth
Alderman.
seconded. So with that, for clarity, Holly, for clarity, when we vote on this, those that are voting in favor are voting in favor of the staff recommendation for the moratorium for 180 days. Correct?
You have a call the question and you vote on calling the question, so you vote on whether or not. I would also remind you that we have posted notice for a hearing at 6 o'clock with the Planning Commission. So if you are ready to have the question, you're ready to vote.
Yes.
That could be withdrawn and you could just vote on the ordinance.
We're voting on the ordinance.
Well, you have a motion on the floor.
You need to push your button.
I withdraw my motion.
Alderman Denham.
Yes.
Okay.
I screw up all the time.
I just don't want to end up longer.
Hey, Mr. Mayor?
So-
Could I have one more?
Sure. Well, yeah.
I have immense confidence in this staff.
I do too.
We were here before. A moratorium has been proposed in the past in a general sense. We didn't move forward with that. And while that may have put a bit of strain on our staff, they accomplished it. I would venture, as people are seeing where I'm kind of heading tonight, that I have confidence that if we were to do the same thing and vote down this moratorium, that our staff, albeit would put them at a challenging position, would be able to accomplish what we're asking them to accomplish.
Okay, so we're going to vote. All in, I need a motion?
You already have a motion, second on the floor.
So the motion is to approve the moratorium for 100 days. 180 minus 80. For 100 days.
Correct, yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Nay.
You want to do a roll call vote?
Let's do that.
please,
That would
Hillary?
be good. Yes,
Yeah.
please. Lucas.
Yes.
Denham.
Yes.
Cooper.
No.
Howden.
No.
LeBlanc.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
The result of the vote is 4 yeses, 2 noes, motion carries.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion adjourned.